Well, good morning, everybody. In today's video, we're going to start off with a quick recap of the last 2 days worth of severe weather and very heavy rainfall. But at the end of this video, we are going to talk about the new updates from the CPC. So if you're just interested in the long range, just fast forward real quick and you'll get to that. First set of images today is just going to be yesterday's satellite. This is just again showing the impressive setup for the severe weather. We had the low that came over parts of Great Lakes yesterday, and this is the main front out ahead of it. This initiated some really nasty storms that rolled through parts of the eastern Cornbelt and eastern Great Lakes, producing a lot of damage. We had a series of storms, that came over parts of the Appalachian Mountains out of the Tennessee Valley into the southeast, and that was following a day yesterday where there was a tremendous amount of damage from a tornado that went through parts of North Carolina. And then we had the storms that blew up on the plains, and these were the ones we were anticipating running over the ridge, and we thought these were going to be kind of big hail producing storms, and they certainly lived up to that nature. We're actually watching what's left of these storms moving through Oklahoma early this morning, and we want to know if it's going to end up building down here into this unstable air mass into the southeast as we progress through the rest of the day today. So on satellite, on radar, just to show you these two things, these are about 12-hour radar loops, so looking back to yesterday, and you can see the storms, the linear structure of the storms producing a lot of straight line wind damage. And through the overnight, that front continued to progress. And here it is today hitting the same regions that over the last few weeks have seen a lot of flooding right here. Now behind this, there's a lot of cooler air. Behind this, there's some drier air. But if you look right down here in the corner, I'll show you a better view of that. This is what's left of the storms from yesterday that came out of Colorado. So numerous reports of very large hail here. What happened is in the overnight, the outflow from these storms kind of gathered into one single piece, and now they're flowing here across parts of northern Oklahoma this morning. And it'll be interesting to watch the outflow from these storms become the trigger that could set off more storms later today, just kind of building right on down this same line, running over the top of this ridge. So in terms of severe weather reports, this was yesterday. Over 500 reports, including 110 reports of hail. You can see we also had just a lot of wind damage here from the squall line to the north, the storm complex that rolled through out of southern Illinois. Again, this one added more rainfall to Kentucky, into Tennessee, and down into South Carolina, producing a lot of severe wind damage. And there's our hail on the backside. Looking at the day before, I just want to take note of this because there was a tornado right here in this part of North Carolina did a lot of damage, and you've probably seen a little bit of the pictures of this. One of three yesterday, and that was one of the ones that was quite bad. You can also see the size of the storm clusters that were here in Minnesota. We've just had a lot of severe weather. If we put this onto a couple of maps, this is the last 24 hours of maximum estimated hail size. So again, we're seeing a lot of these plain storms tossing out baseball and softball size hail just repeatedly in several of the same locations. Because if I were to just take this and show you maybe the last 3 days of this, we can now see that this area has just been hit very hard into Missouri in the last 3 days here with a lot of hail. But there's also been training thunderstorms that have sat right over this area. And I don't think I mentioned these as much as I wanted to yesterday. But just to continue to see the stalled out boundary here, it's kind of a part of a low like this and a ridge like this. And so you get that combination, and there's no reason for that boundary to move. So the storms blow up on it, and they just continue to traverse that area. In parts of Kentucky and southern Illinois and Missouri, here getting into Tennessee, this region and through here picked up. There was multiple rounds of storms over about a 4-day time frame. And collectively, some places have picked up over a foot of rain, causing some catastrophic flooding. Now today, the storms that were moving through northern Oklahoma still have a severe thunderstorm watch. There's a couple of warnings in here. Excessive heat all along the Gulf Coast down into Florida and then in the west. But one of the big narratives we've carried this week is how this ridge that's produced all this heat south and west is going to open into the central United States as we progress forward going into next week. Now, one big question we're going to try to answer is where are the storms going to be around that ridge, and where and how long is the heat going to last? So first, storms today. Storm Prediction Center is going to watch that corridor we mentioned, that being the greatest risk of seeing where those storms continue to kind of plow through this area. So wind risk here again. So this is going to hit some places that have already been hit hard this week. We'll watch the front range of the Rockies to blow up more storms, and also the front that's moving through early this morning into New England has the risk of producing some stronger storms as well. By tomorrow, parts of the Midwest along the Gulf Coast, we're going to keep an eye on with the SPC. And then this is the outlook for the 23rd. So it's actually kind of nice to see an outlook that doesn't have at least a marginal or slight risk on it, but we'll watch to see if that changes. High-res models, I think were well initialized this morning given the position of this front that you just saw on radar and the storms that were coming through northern Oklahoma. I think actually the initialization is late, so the storms have progressed farther than this. But as we just play through the rest of the day today, it'll be the outflow of those storms that eventually then sets up along a boundary here and becomes the risk factor for later tonight, the storms to roll through here. There will be isolated storms that blow up in the mountains that are not being well resolved. As we just play this forward, that's going to slice through the southeast as we work our way through the rest of the day into tomorrow as well. Now after that, this pattern has a little bit different look to it, and we need to see what that look is going to be coming from. So what I want to do is I want to show you the current upper level flow. This trough here and the ridge that's opening there are influencing what has been a pretty regular feature for the month of July, which is a deeper trough that's been in the Hudson Bay. The ridge that you see kind of spinning here, that one is going to open. It's going to open in this direction like we've talked about all week, replacing the last few days of cooler weather in the Midwest with some of the heat we've seen across the South and into the Western United States. So I want to show you the height pattern because this is where the story is really going to be told here, all right? So as we play this through the day on Friday into the weekend, we have the deeper trough and the highly amplified pattern setting up. Now it'll be this trough that's going to be very influential as it runs over the top of this ridge right here into British Columbia and Alberta. This is a great precipitation maker, cloud maker. Love every bit of it for that area, which has been on fire. But what it does is it kind of works to flatten this ridge out a bit and start to open it up and expand it a bit farther to you. That's just part of this whole pattern. And as that occurs, we end up getting something like this by midweek next week. So this is a ridge that's opening into the middle part of the United States, moving out of the four corners over towards like Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And the question is, how long does that last? Because as we play this out there using the European ensemble all the way to next Friday, very hot finish to the week in this area, cooler weather for the West, unsettled weather for the West. This is a stormy pattern for the West. As we take this out there into Saturday, July 29th, out there July 30th, the question I have, and I've had it all week, is does this ridge begin to tighten up and retrograde back to the west because of a deeper trough that just kind of becomes reinvigorated here in the kind of eastern side of Canada? Or does the ridge stay open? And at this point, the models keep wanting to give us that clue that the ridge focuses more along, right here along the front range of the Rocky Mountains rather than opening up over the 100th meridian or even farther to the east. So that's going to put an endpoint on the duration of the heat here and put it back where it's been in the west, which has been just absolutely oppressive as of late. So now that you've seen what the latest model forecast update looks like, let's go have a look at a few different variables. Precipitation first. What you've got from the WPC is all of this right here. This was today and what we're expecting going forward. These are your convective events that happen along the Gulf Coast, which are quite normal, and a lot of isolated storms in this area. But I'll be honest, after that, so much of this just clears out until we get the ridge possibly setting up ridge riding storms coming out of the Midwest, maybe out of the Canadian prairie. And none of that's going to be resolved very well by the models. But I will show you what the European is up to. So you'll see first, this is the rain we watched overnight, getting added up today, going into the weekend. So there it is. There's the low exiting New England. Some isolated storms are possible in this area. With the heat that's going to be coming in next week, though, we'll need to get as much rain as we can over the weekend, but it's not much at all. Texas, extremely hot and dry. Parts of Oklahoma are the same, although there's a cold front that's going to try to dig down here and bring relief to some places, but you'll see this quickly rebound back to those hotter temperatures. The West is going to see a big transformation in temperature, especially California and up the West Coast. But as I play this forward, this is next week, the European model, notice, storm systems rolling through the Canadian prairie, well, north of the Canadian prairie. Watch right in through here. You will see the model bounce around a lot over the coming days on what it's attempting to do out here about a week from now with bringing in northwest flow and trying to show some storms into this area. Now, this is just an area we're watching carefully because, remember, planted under warm conditions, then it went to about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks of very cold conditions and frosts. Then we had the drought that happened May and June, the severe weather that broke all of that drought afterward. And then now this is kind of like the third hit, right? This is the next punch coming in of the heat. And if these isolated storm complexes show up in this area, that will be a major change overall and relieve some of the heat. Remember, always to the south of it, this has been an active severe weather corridor of extremely heavy rainfall this year, but this is an area to the north that's seen almost the opposite of that. So what is the newest update on the 10-day outlooks? Well, this area has again seen an increase in the newest model run of having a higher chance. It's still low on the color bar down here, but a higher chance of having an inch of rainfall. So it keeps filling in because the model is attempting to resolve the flow, building in those ridge riding storms into this area. All of this, remember, is right now. So this is today, and then this will be out. So as that ridge opens, this area is going to go very, very hot and very dry. Now, I'm going to show you the newest updates from week 2 because the models are finally kind of catching up with this idea. And you can see in all 3 models, the CPC, the European, and the GFS, that they have painted this corridor drier, which is finally making the GFS look right down here, although we know that's a known bias, but storms running all throughout the periphery of this. And now when you start to see the European model showing normal precipitation in through here, that's a better indicator that there will be those ridge riding storms coming through this area. But this will be a very hot and dry stretch for part of the cotton belt, getting down into the lower Mississippi River Valley and all the way here over to parts of the southeast going forward in this forecast, with only daily convective events that happen right here along the Gulf Coast. You will probably still see in all your forecasts, 30% chance of daily storms because storms still pop in this heat, but the chances of them, popping in a widespread, numerous, big coverage area is just very limited. So on the temperature side of this, the newest update from the National Weather Service, they've now got a few areas. Risk is now high for excessive heat, the 28th through the 29th. And we're going to watch the surrounding area to finish off the month of July. But I still think there's a cutoff point for a lot of the excessive heat that you see in this area. Let's walk through the daily high temperatures, though, just to get there. Here's today on Friday. So again, there's that relief coming into parts of like Oklahoma, northern Texas, Arkansas after what had been just an excruciatingly hot week. But it's still very hot south and west. And as we play this forward into Saturday and Sunday, this is when the ridge begins to open. So now these triple digits start to come out into the plains. They come out here into the western Cornbelt, while the southeast is kind of the last holdout for near normal summer temperatures. Then into Monday and Tuesday, this opens up to a lot of upper 90s. We'll hit triple digits in several locations here on Tuesday, going into Wednesday. It appears as though that the 26th through I think the 29th is going to be the hottest stretch in here. But from St. Louis to Kansas City, already picking up on 101 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, stretching across Kansas as well. And then you get a lot of places in here where the current forecast is for upper 90s, but we'll break into the low 100s with this. This is out there to next Thursday, same scenario. So look at the West getting a break and the Midwest really taking on a lot of this heat. Now, how long does it last? I'm going to show you an operational run from a model. We're going to pick this up a week from now because we just looked at the next week. So we're looking for anything that begins to break down this heat because it won't break down here in the south and certainly in the desert southwest. But going from Thursday into Friday, let's park it right there in the afternoon. This is now the 28th, getting into the 29th. You start to see that there's something coming in here to kind of knock this out a little bit. It's partially the redevelopment of a trough here. It's partially some storms coming through, but it sends that oppressive heat a bit farther to the south and still keeps it into this area. So the longest duration heat with this whole event is going to be the south as this ridge opens up. So what about the newest update from the European model on the 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies? I want to take you out there today, 5 through 10. So we know we're expecting the month of July to finish very hot in a big broad section of the United States with the coolest weather along the west. But then as we play this forward, you almost watch. Let me just rock back and forth out here, day 10 through 15. Do you almost get the sense that the heat is opening back up along the spine of the Rockies? That's where the current model forecast is redeveloping that ridge. Okay, so now we got the latest updates on this. We kind of see that there is going to be a 5 to 7 day really hot episode in through here starting early next week and lasting through the weekend. But the duration of those upper 90s and triple digit temperatures seems to have a cutoff there at the end of that time frame. And we go back to more normal summer temperatures, or still above normal, but not, incredibly hot. From the tropics, we'll wait for the 8 a.m. update here. In fact, let's just see if it came in. Oh, it just came in. They bumped this up to a 40% chance now of tropical cyclone formation. I was using the European ensembles. They've got a much higher chance of this developing as the next couple of days goes forward. So in the 50 to 70% range, and this getting into the Caribbean, Again, I'm going to make the same statement. Watch whatever comes out of here to possibly toss some of the convection into the Gulf of Mexico, because those ocean temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are still very, very hot. So I want to finish this up with a bit of a long range here. Okay, first of all, what's going on in Nino region 3.4? This is kind of a metric of our El Nino. We're now up here almost a full degree above average. But if I show you those ocean temperatures in the Western Atlantic from a great website, Tropical Tidbits, we've seen expanding hot water in this area. A lot of area now well above 31 degrees Celsius. So we're pushing here, 90 degree Fahrenheit water for a big section here of the country, or excuse me, a big section of the Gulf of Mexico. So this is why I'm worried about anything that's going to get into this area. So please, let's watch that together, the evolution of this storm system over the weekend, to see what happens here. Okay, lastly, the Climate Prediction Center updated nearly everything on their website. We got a brand new update of the drought monitor. Not a whole lot of surprise with what you see here, but they did give a new seasonal drought outlook. So the Pacific Northwest, going into the Four Corner states, into Texas, now has, through October, the risk of drought development. So this would be a weakened southwest monsoonal flow as we go forward. Even though there's been some good storms in here, it hasn't been the true monsoonal flow we expect to see. Then what you've got up here is possibly a delay to the start to the wet season as well. And what's happening here is that the CPC has fully, I think, bought into El Nino taking over on this pattern, meaning strong subtropical jet at some point coming through, but missing the Pacific Northwest. So the next thing they updated, if we're going to go out there and look longer range, is going to be their 1 month temperature outlook. And that is El Nino if I've ever seen it, right? So August, a forecast, cooler here, heat west, drier in the Four Corners, but wet in that same corridor. This would be a very El Nino-like look. Now, yesterday what I covered was, yeah, El Nino's developing, but it's not there in the Southern Oscillation Index. It's not there in the pressure pattern across the Pacific. It's certainly not been there in its influence of the jet stream, and the Bermuda High still is kind of vacated the premises, right? So when we look at all of this, this is the CPC telling us that their scientists are suggesting that as we get into later summer, El Nino becomes a dominant factor. And they've included that also in their 3 month outlook, which goes all the way out here to August, September, October. Again, newest updates on the forecast. So just take a good look at this here. Now, if you come to this website, cpc.noaa.gov, click on 3 month right there. And what it'll do is take you to this page. And when you get to this page, you can look at all of the 3 month outlooks going forward. And one of the things we're going to have to begin to talk about, I mean, I know it's the middle of summer, but it's good to just open the narrative, is what we think may happen out here for this upcoming late fall and winter. So let's go out there and just have a quick look at October, November, December. Because the temperature pattern during that time, you've got this in terms of temperature, so cooler with heat flanking the country. And the 90-day outlook on, I apologize, I clicked on the wrong thing there. The precipitation outlook is very wet for the southeast, but there's that potential drought development in the northwest. Now, if we come back to the original page here, I want to show you that they've really bought into this El Nino look for winter, because this is El Nino to the T. Hot north, well, let me rephrase that. Less cold north, near normal south. And the precipitation for that time frame, wet south, drier north. I mean, that is very much an El Nino-like forecast for a winter. And I understand why they did it, because they just updated their risk, and they've now got us at let's go look, above a 96% chance all the way through November, December, January of having El Nino be the dominant factor. So I'll call it into question again. When does this all engage? I know the CPC says it's going to happen here in the month of August, but I think we just need to watch the Southern Oscillation Index. We need to watch the pressure patterns. We need to watch the MJO. We need to watch the trade winds. If you hear me start talking about big westerly wind bursts in the Pacific Ocean or the Southern Oscillation Index just plummeting, then we've got it. It'll be there. But until that happens, we're going to have to wait to see if this is an actual possible solution from the CPC on what the next month is going to look like. So that's not a criticism. That's just good science, right? We're just looking at the options here. All right. Thanks for hanging with me this week. We will talk again next week. Thanks.